Lawrence Okolie due to fight Tony Yoka in Paris this Saturday. He has returned an adverse finding in a VADA anti-doping test ahead of his heavyweight bout in Paris, as I say, with Yoka. The news came through about the failed test, and now, as far as I gather, in the background, there is a lot of scrambling going on to find a replacement in the days that are left for the fight against Yoka, so that
That scrambling you just heard? That's the sound of a major boxing promotion imploding 72 hours before fight night. Lawrence Okolie, the #1 ranked WBC heavyweight contender, just failed a VADA drug test. And the timing couldn't be worse. This was supposed to be his breakout moment in Paris against Tony Yoka this Saturday. Instead, Frank Warren is desperately searching for a replacement opponent while Okolie's entire career hangs in the balance.
You soon. I'm gonna say something that I know is gonna piss a lot of you off. You know, when someone, 99% of the time when someone fails a drug test, I'm like, yeah, cool. And for me, they're almost guilty before they have any chance of proving their innocence. That's kind of where I am, because, you know, I followed this sport for many a year, and most people that fail drugs tests aren't able to prove that they're innocent. I don't know what it is about Lawrence Okolie, and some of you might say, yeah, it's because you know him. I know him, but it's not like I have his number, but I do know him. When I see him, it's love. Lawrence is like one of the last people.
Here's what makes this particularly devastating. Okolie wasn't some random prospect. He was positioned for a world title shot, beat Yoka in Paris, and he's looking at fights with Alexander Usyk, Fabio Wardley, or Agit Kabayel. We're talking massive paydays, career-defining opportunities, legitimate heavyweight relevance. Now, he's facing a potential ban, complete reputational destruction, and the very real possibility that his boxing career is effectively over at 33 years old. But here's where it gets complicated. Okolie released a statement within hours, claiming this was all a mistake.
Actually due to go to Nigeria when? Next week? So I'm not quite sure how that works out, but he's an opponent. Joe Joyce is desperately looking for a fight. It'll be a rematch of the Olympics, right? When Joe thought he won. They've been going back and forth. Martin Bakole has openly called for this fight. He's gone onto his social media platforms and he's called out Tony Yoka. Remember, Bakole beat Yoka. Yoka's been chasing that fight. Them two have been going back and forth at each other. I mean, do you make Bakole Yoka? It's a big fight. It's a big fight in Paris. I'm telling you now. The Congolese community will come out for that one. It's massive. Remember, Tony Yoka is of Congolese heritage.
So Okolie's defense is that he received treatment for an elbow injury during training camp, and whatever the doctor injected into his arm is what triggered the positive test. On the surface, that sounds plausible. Fighters get injured all the time. They need treatment to continue training. Medical interventions happen. But here's the problem with that explanation. VADA makes it incredibly easy to avoid this exact situation. You can literally send them a photo of whatever substance your doctor wants to use, and they'll tell you immediately whether it's on the banned list. It takes minutes. Carl Frampton is even developing an app where fighters can scan medications and get instant VADA approval or rejection. So if Okolie's story is true, the question becomes, why didn't he take that simple precaution? Why would you risk your entire career by letting a doctor inject something into your body without first verifying it's legal? That's not just careless, that's negligent to the point of professional malpractice.
He's currently ranked #1 with them for the Ring Unified Champion Alexander Usyk's title, which he will defend against Rico Verhoeven in May. We don't need to worry about that. It is unclear whether Samek Harbja will be, oh, that's obviously on the undercard, of course, will be elevated to main event. The card will continue at the time of publication. The Ring has reached out to Queensberry for confirmation. Oh boy, where do we start with this? I would imagine that fight is down to Swanee, to be honest with you. We've heard this but so many times on Fight Week, haven't we? It really.
And this is where the strict liability rule becomes crucial. In boxing, you are responsible for whatever ends up in your system, period. Intent doesn't matter. Contamination doesn't matter unless you can prove exactly how it happened with documented evidence. Conor Benn managed to navigate that process successfully, but most fighters can't. The standard is absolute. If a banned substance shows up in your test, you need to demonstrate with forensic precision how it got there, prove it wasn't for performance enhancement, and convince the authorities that you took every reasonable precaution to avoid contamination. That's an incredibly high bar to clear. What we don't know yet is what specific substance triggered the positive test. That detail matters enormously. Was it an anabolic steroid? A masking agent? A stimulant? Something that could legitimately be in a medical treatment for an elbow injury? Until VADA releases those results, we're speculating.
That's where we're at.
So Okolie fighting in Paris this weekend is now no longer happening, clearly.
He's tested positive, and under that circumstances, he's immediately suspended. And obviously, he'll have to deal with that at a hearing when they convene a hearing for it. It's very, very, very unsatisfactory, but it is what it is, and we've got to get on with it and make sure we run a show. And that's what we're trying to do at the moment, and find an opponent for Tony Yoka. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find the British fighters to get in there.
And this is where boxing's inconsistent approach to drug testing becomes a massive problem. Frank Warren is right that the testing system is doing its job by catching violations. VADA has been increasingly aggressive over the past few years, and we've seen a corresponding spike in positive tests. Conor Benn, Jaime Munguia, Ryan Garcia, Joseph Parker for a recreational drug, and now Okolie. But here's what's broken. The consequences are wildly inconsistent. Ryan Garcia tested positive for Ostarine after beating Devin Haney, kept his victory on his record initially, and faced minimal career damage. Conor Benn has been fighting overseas despite his situation remaining unresolved in the UK. The enforcement is arbitrary, the punishments vary dramatically, and fighters have learned they can sometimes navigate around the rules. That inconsistency creates a perverse incentive structure. If you know there's a chance you can beat the system, or that the penalties might be minimal even if you're caught, why not take the risk? Especially in a sport where the financial rewards for success are enormous, and the window for earning is brutally short.
I take it he may go down the contamination route.
I've got no idea. That's for him to explain. That's what these tests are for. You know, if fighters are tested positive, then the bottom line is they have to explain how it got into their system. And it's as simple as that. And that's for him and his legal team to work on and decide how they're going to approach it.
That was Frank Warren. In the last few moments, Lawrence Okolie has posted this. Before anyone starts imagining the worst, following my bicep injury last year, I sustained an elbow injury on the same arm during this camp. I had a treatment on it, and now we are here. I truly hope that sense prevails. He says, I will of course be fully cooperating with all the relevant authorities, and I'm confident.
Now let's talk about what happens to the Paris card this Saturday. Frank Warren wants to keep the show going, which makes sense. They've sold 8,000 tickets, there's an undercard full of fighters who need to get paid, and canceling the entire event would be a financial disaster. The obvious replacement options are limited. Martin Bakole has already called for the fight on social media. He beat Yoka in the past, there's genuine bad blood between them, and the Congolese community would turn out in massive numbers since both fighters share that heritage. That would actually be a bigger fight than the original matchup. But Bakole has legal issues with promoter Ben Shalom, who claims to still have him under contract. Plus, he's not British, and Warren specifically said he's looking for a British opponent. And would Yoka even want to face someone who already beat him on such short notice? Joe Joyce is the most logical choice. He's British, he's a Warren fighter, and there's history. Yoka beat Joyce controversially at the 2016 Olympics. The rematch storyline writes itself. But Joyce hasn't fought since losing to Zhilei Zhang over a year ago, and we have no idea what kind of shape he's in physically or mentally. David Adeli is another possibility. But he's coming off a loss, and fighting someone as big as Yoka on short notice could be career damaging. The risk-reward doesn't make sense for him.
Yeah, what drug it is. For now, let me see if there's any other statements from anyone. For now, there are no more statements from anyone. Nothing from Queensberry. Anything from DAZN? Doubt it. Let's have a look. No, nothing from DAZN. They've just reposted the Queensberry post. So look, we wait and see. I hope the show goes ahead. I want to, from a very selfish point of view, I do want to go to Paris. I do want to see some boxing over there. Germany was fantastic. And, you know, the beauty of this is it's the heavyweights. So you don't need to, I mean, you need to be in shape, obviously, but a lot of these guys should be in shape. There's a difference, though, between being in shape and being in fighting shape, but they should have a good 6 rounds in them regardless. And you don't have to make weight. Obviously, that's the beauty of it. So I guess it comes down to pounds and pence. But if they want to keep the show...
Here's what makes this situation particularly tragic for Okolie. He owns a restaurant in Dubai. With the geopolitical situation in that region and the general economic uncertainty, his business profits are likely down. Boxing was supposed to be his financial security, his path to generational wealth. Win in Paris, get the title shot, secure the big payday. Now he's facing the opposite trajectory. If he can't prove this was an innocent mistake with documented evidence, he's looking at a lengthy ban. And even if he does prove it was accidental, the damage to his reputation is permanent. In boxing, once you're labeled a PED cheat, that stigma never fully disappears. Fighters will use it as an excuse not to fight you. Promoters will be hesitant to invest in building you up. Fans will question every performance, every victory, every moment of success. You become radioactive. And Okolie was already facing perception problems before this. He's not considered an exciting fighter. He holds a lot. His style is defensive and cautious. He's not a big draw, and other heavyweights aren't exactly lining up to face him. Add failed drug test to that resume, and who's going to want to do business with him? The timing is absolutely brutal. Okolie is 33 years old. In heavyweight terms, that's still prime years. Guys can compete at the highest level well into their late 30s. But if he's banned for even 18 months to 2 years, he's 35 when he comes back, carrying the PED stigma, having lost all his momentum and trying to rebuild a career that was already on shaky ground. Think about what he's lost in the past 72 hours. The Yoka fight is gone. The world title shot that would have followed a victory is gone. The massive payday is gone. His #1 WBC ranking will likely be stripped. His promotional relationship with Queensberry is now complicated at best. His reputation is destroyed, and his entire future in the sport is in jeopardy, all because of whatever substance ended up in his system during that elbow treatment. Now, let's give Okolie the benefit of the doubt for a moment. Let's assume his explanation is completely truthful. He got injured, he went to a doctor, the doctor gave him a treatment, and that treatment contained a banned substance that neither of them realized was prohibited. If that's what happened, Okolie needs to provide documentation immediately. Medical records showing the injury, documentation of the treatment, the specific name and composition of whatever was injected, evidence that he disclosed this to VADA before the test or immediately after the injury, communication with his team about the medical intervention. If he can produce that paper trail, he has a chance. Not a guarantee, but a chance. The authorities might accept that this was genuine negligence rather than intentional doping. They might reduce the ban or even clear him entirely. But if he can't produce that documentation, or if the substance that triggered the positive test is something that couldn't possibly be in a legitimate medical treatment for an elbow injury, then his career is finished. Because at that point, the contamination defense falls apart, and we're left with a heavyweight contender who deliberately used PEDs to gain an advantage. And here's the thing about the court of public opinion. Okolie is already guilty. Most boxing fans have seen this movie before. Fighter fails test, fighter claims innocent mistake, fighter can't prove it, fighter serves ban, fighter's career never recovers. We've watched that pattern repeat dozens of times. The few exceptions, like Conor Benn, who's managed to keep fighting despite his situation, are outliers, who had massive promotional backing and legal resources. Okolie doesn't have that same level of support. He's a solid contender, but he's not a superstar who promoters will move heaven and earth to protect. So realistically, even if he's completely innocent, the damage is done. The headlines will always say, failed drug test. The asterisk will always be next to his name. The suspicion will always linger. Watch that initial reaction from Frank Warren again. That's not just disappointment, that's a promoter realizing one of his main assets just lost all his value overnight. Warren has to salvage this Paris card, find a replacement opponent, manage the PR disaster, and figure out what to do with a fighter who might be toxic for the foreseeable future. And consider Tony Yoka's perspective. He's fighting in his hometown, in front of his fans, on his comeback trail after his own struggles with missed drug tests years ago. He prepared specifically for Okolie's style, his height, his reach, his defensive approach, his holding tactics. Now he's being asked to face a completely different opponent with 72 hours notice. Does Yoka even take the fight? Does he risk his comeback on a short-notice replacement who might be a stylistic nightmare? Or does he withdraw, wait for a proper camp, and reschedule for later in the year? Those are the cascading consequences of one failed drug test. It doesn't just affect the fighter who tested positive. It impacts the opponent, the promotion, the venue, the undercard fighters, the ticket buyers, the broadcast partners, everyone. So where does this leave us? Lawrence Okolie's career is in crisis. His explanation might be legitimate, but the burden of proof is entirely on him, and that's an incredibly difficult standard to meet. The Paris card is in chaos, with no clear solution. Tony Yoka's comeback is derailed. And boxing once again looks like a sport that can't get out of its own way when it comes to drug testing and enforcement. The sad reality is that this situation was entirely preventable. If Okolie had taken 5 minutes to verify his treatment with VADA, we wouldn't be here. If boxing had consistent, transparent enforcement of drug testing violations, the incentive structure would be different. If promoters prioritized clean sport over protecting their assets, the culture would change. But we don't have any of those things. So instead, we have another failed test, another ruined card, another fighter's career potentially destroyed, and another black eye for a sport that can't seem to clean itself up. The question now is whether Okolie can prove his innocence with documented evidence, or whether this is the end of his time as a legitimate heavyweight contender. Based on how these situations usually play out, I'm not optimistic, but I hope he can prove me wrong. Because if his story is true, this is a tragedy born of negligence rather than malice. What do you think? Does Okolie's explanation hold water, or is this just another case of a fighter getting caught and making excuses? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let me know if you think he'll ever fight for a world title after this. Hit that subscribe button because this story is far from over, and we'll be covering every development as it unfolds.